absolutely true. And Plum Island was created by a Nazi scientist. And Plum Island is this little island that the top-secret Pentagon experiments going on off the coast of Lyme, Connecticut. And in the paperback of American Conspiracies, which just came out, there's a new chapter about the likelihood that Lyme disease was, in fact, created on Plum Island. And Jesse Ventura did one of his TV shows, Conspiracy Theory, about that.
And it showed up in Lyme, Connecticut. And now they've got Morgellons, and certainly a lot of the folks that think they have it are paranoid schizophrenics, but now we have the University of Michigan. Researchers inject nanofiber spears carrying cells into wounds to grow tissue, and then you look at this, and it looks exactly like basically what the scientists and medical doctors that have looked and removed this Morgellon stuff, it looks like that's exactly what this is.
You know, I've read a little about that, and it's scary as hell, what I've read. So I would like to look into that further myself, and yeah, it's terrifying.
Well, the point is, what you prove in the book, you know, people always say, well, if 1% of what Alex Jones says is true, we're in deep trouble. Try 98%, folks. We do our research here. Sometimes we make mistakes when we come back and correct them. But, I mean, your book, this is all admitted stuff going on here. And it just shows that they have gotten away with murder, and now the system is emboldened. When you talked about this global corporate fascist oligarchy, who do you see at the head of this New World Order from your decades of research, and what do you think their end game is, Dick Russell?
You know, I don't think we know who the real powers that be are that are at the bottom or at the top. I mean, we know of certain well-known people who have billions of dollars, but I don't think the real guys are going to come out and let themselves be exposed. Now, that could be the whole, Bohemian Grove idea of those people that meet there secretly. And the end game, the top 1% survive no matter what. I mean,
yep.
That's what it's looking like to me, and they will stop at nothing. And in the book, there's a section on 9/11 which I would like to touch on a little bit, starting with the big think tank, the Project for a New American Century, anticipating 9/11 not too long before it happened, saying what's really needed to advance the agenda of which was then the Bush administration. Is a new Pearl Harbor, and so we've got those documents in there. Then warnings that happened, the FBI's knowledge of terrorists who were training at flight schools, Bush being told in August that bin Laden is determined to strike in the U.S. Not that I am saying that bin Laden was necessarily responsible. If he was, I think the Bush administration, either, I'm talking mainly Rumsfeld and Cheney, knew about it and let it happen, or were involved in it, and I think there's plenty of evidence to that effect. The book also includes the stand-down order that the Pentagon, the change that happened in June of 2001, a few months before the Twin Towers came down, where the Joint Chiefs of Staff issued this new instruction, superseding one that had happened in 1997, which required approval by the Secretary of Defense for any potentially lethal support in the event of an aircraft piracy or hijacking. So, that's what Rumsfeld is doing, and Rumsfeld is suddenly not available on 9/11.
That's right. They took the default in early June that had been there since '57 away from generals and admirals and officers having the default with an aircraft that was going to crash into a city. They could put AIM-9 Sidewinders into it. They took the default power away from the actual commanders, gave it only to Rumsfeld, and then he stood down that day, and we have the transportation secretary, Mr. Mineta,
right,
in the bunker, and Cheney lying later about how early he got there, witnessing him tell the aide the order for the stand-down basically still stands. Very powerful.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And by the way, Ventura has incredible courage. So do you. But, I mean, we've been covering the stand-down order since it came out months after 9/11. But the issue is to have prominent people come out and to have him on CNN say, I believe Dick Cheney was involved, and here's the evidence of the stand-down. I mean, that is life-risking actions. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have great admiration for Governor Ventura getting out and talking about these things, too. And thought he held his own pretty damn well against some of the media people that were trying to shoot him down. We also get into in the book the free fall, as it's called, of Building 7, the third skyscraper that came down that day.
And NIST has had to admit now that it did free fall after 8 years of denying it.
That's right, and we include that document in the book, which completely violates the laws of physics. In other words, a free fall descent for about 8 stories, where there's nothing in that can only happen if there's zero resistance to the motion. So the NIST report is finally admitting, and that could only be a controlled demolition of some kind. It's not being caused by the fires or whatever that they were claiming it had finally brought the building down. So that's very clear stuff. And my hope is that people will read the book and scratch their heads and say, "Wow, I had no idea that we had reached this scale of not just secrecy, but this is where the country has come to today, and our liberties are being threatened in a way that they never have in the history of the country."
And if we have new listeners, as we have a lot of AM and FM affiliates out there who were angered or shocked by us talking about controlled demolitions in the towers, despite the fact that thousands of architects and engineers are on record. We have the footage of police saying, get back from 7, they're going to bring it down, they're going to blow it up. I heard them on the news that day say they're going to blow up Building 7 to protect the other buildings. Then people ask, well, how'd you put bombs in there? When normally it takes weeks, and sometimes they still don't come down. And they said, we didn't blow it up. I mean, look, facts are facts, folks. This stuff happened. Just like Fox News has the headline, Anwar al-Awlaki secretly meeting at the Pentagon as he's the number 2 of al-Qaeda, and then he runs all the major attacks in the U.S. And in fact, we'll put that on screen. From your research, Dick Russell, do you concur with my analysis? Al-Qaeda is admittedly set up by Zbigniew Brzezinski, used as a client operation against groups the globalists want to overtake. Serbia, southern Serbia, Libya, start a war with the Russians. Brzezinski brags that al-Qaeda, these Muslim Brigade people, were set up and used. The al-Qaeda commanders are New World Order controlled. A lot of times their low-level fighters don't know that. They're really Islamist jihadis.
Well, there's certainly plenty of evidence that, bin Laden and others worked for the U.S. government in the past. There's just no doubt about it. Bin Laden was employed by the CIA in Afghanistan. People could say, oh, well, then they turned and, used their knowledge and turned it back on us. But, I've got grave doubts about that. I don't know that I would go quite as far as you, Alex, but I wouldn't rule it out.
They've had Special Forces Delta Force commander, knew where he was at, and wasn't allowed to kill him. It's endless.
Yeah, and of course, I'm pretty sure they've known where he is for a long time, but he's the boogeyman. He was the big boogeyman until Julian Assange came along and WikiLeaks, and really, it's just absurd. Here we're torturing this guy, Bradley Manning, who apparently, gave all these documents to WikiLeaks,
which is impossible. He's the scapegoat.
Yeah, he's the scapegoat. He's this 22-year-old young military guy that is facing 52 years in prison, being held in solitary in Quantico.
Freezing naked. That's one of the worst forms of torture.
Absolutely.
They keep him in a freezing cell naked for months.
It's outrageous, and it's outrageous that, then this guy, one of the people in the administration speaks up about it, and he's suddenly gone.
And they're torturing him if it takes 10 years, like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, until he confesses to killing Kennedy, Jesus, crucifying him, and sinking the Lusitania.
Well, they're driving the guy crazy. There's no doubt about it. And, of course, they're trying to get Assange over here extradited to do the same thing to him. But
with those 2 CIA-connected women, those honeypots, a lot of news has reported they may be honeypots. We'll be right back with Dick Russell on the other side. Stay with us. We'll look at JFK and the Green Men. Yeah, we've got the Obama people now worse than Cheney. Of course, it's just a progression of tyranny. Arresting reporters in the U.S., charging them for talking to whistleblowers. The fundamentals of the First Amendment are under attack. And even if you don't think 9/11's an inside job, they're certainly using it to go after our liberties and freedoms. And we've got the internal government documents where they admit that. Now, going back to Dick Russell, will be with us 5 minutes the next hour. Then I'm getting into all the other news. I didn't even scratch the surface in the first hour. But this Mail Online story, it's also, it's all over the news. Was JFK killed because of his interest in aliens? Secret memo shows president demanded UFO files 10 days before death. Now, the question is, did he send this letter? Is it real? The FBI saying. Then you have these Majestic or Majesty 12 type stuff. And Dick's been sent the documents before by people saying they're fake, so why is the FBI now putting them out on this site? This wouldn't be the first time the government puts out secret documents about WMDs in Iraq. I know about Project Bluebeam that's been partially declassified to have giant fake alien landings or have Muhammad or Christ come back, or they could project a giant Ninja Turtle, Easter Bunny, whatever they wanted to freak folks out, along with spraying LSD in the air. Basically, a fake UFO landing's been in the cards for a long time. Dick Russell, I don't know your view on this. Give me your view on this pretty big news item.
Yeah, well, I've been curious because in the last week or so, first there was this release of an FBI document, which about Roswell in 1947, when which a few years later, and saying yes, there were several alien bodies recovered from this crash site. So that was the first thing that happened. And then yesterday, the CIA apparently released to this researcher named William Lester, who's doing a book on the Kennedy era, and this is these letters that JFK wrote to the CIA requesting that he see these highly confidential documents about UFOs, and the date is November 12th, now of 1963. Now, this looks fascinating on the face of it, but I got to say that when I was putting together this book, 63 Documents book with Governor Ventura, we thought of including a section on UFOs, and then and some of these, in fact, the two that were just released, supposedly just released by the CIA, I've got these documents and I've had them for some time, and they're part of this whole MJ-12 majestic situation where a researcher was sent all these supposedly secret documents a number of years ago. And that same researcher told me that there's grave doubt about whether these are real or not, and therefore, you'd be advised not to use them, including this famous Byrne document, which supposedly was dug out of a fireplace, James Angleton's fireplace, head of counterintelligence for CIA, and that indicates that JFK had to be bumped off because he was trying to get access to the UFO files. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm skeptical about this latest release because why is the CIA suddenly releasing this? And it's big news since they've been out there for a long time.
Well, there's no doubt. Have you seen the Battle of L.A.? It is a pure Marine Corps recruitment ad with kids saying, oh, I'm going to be a big Marine when I grow up. And they fight the aliens. And there's this full court press, that aliens are going to attack us. And Kissinger said that if we ever had this happen, it'd be a great unifier. Ronald Reagan said similar things. I think this is the beginning of a major psyop. And I've been saying this for years, but it's really starting to get creepy.
It's very weird that all of a sudden this stuff is being released to the public, and people should begin thinking aliens are real. And I'm not saying they're not. I mean, I've studied UFO literature.
But right as the global meltdown begins, the FBI, CIA, the green men are real. My grandmother, because my grandfather was a lease hound, in 47 was in Roswell, and she did see troops, big trucks with things under tarps, troops with guns. So she did see that. I never even knew this till we were driving, and we're going to break 1 minute. We'll come right back for 5 more minutes, Dick. But to finish the story, we're driving back a few days after Christmas from going skiing. We took an RV out in New Mexico, and we stopped at a Denny's in Roswell. My grandmother's like, there's the petroleum building. That's where my husband worked. And then we learned about the Roswell.
GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Jesse Ventura with Dick Russell, New York Times bestselling authors. 63 documents the government doesn't want you to read. The perfect book tool for those that still read. Someday it'll be a conspiracy theory that we could ever read or walk. We're trying to ban dodgeball all over the country. We're going to be breaking that down as we're turned into little servile prisoners to be inserted into the matrix for our safety. There's actually a Pentagon document on that. Got declassified 2001. The whole Matrix movie is based on that, but that's a whole other subject. They got some really weird theoretical plans. But there will be peace once you're inserted into the tank. They ought to pull that article up. People won't believe that. Federation of American Scientists leaked it in 2001, actually, and the Pentagon got real mad. That's a document for you to look up, Dick. Pretty wild stuff, but truth is stranger than fiction. Who would have thought we would have cows that have human genes to produce baby milk for humans? Who would think we had part spider, part goats 15 years ago creating body armor? Who would have thought we'd have salmon that are insect and that they say will part insect and part other fish. I mean, we're living in a crazy world, and thank God you've written this book, available at Infowars.com.
Well, thanks very much.